My sister always got away with everything. Lying, stealing, manipulating, our parents always covered for her. But the moment Mike slipped me the truth, I knew it was only a matter of time before her whole world burned. That's what my sister said to me, arms folded across her chest, her lips curled into that smug little smile I'd seen 1,000 times before. She said it with such fake sweetness that, for a split second, I almost thought she was trying to help me. Almost. But then my mother, sitting at the kitchen table with her cup of tea, barely glanced up before saying softly, "She's right." And my dad? He didn't even look away from his phone. He just muttered, "Yeah, maybe it's better this way." I stood there, frozen, staring at all three of them. Did they rehearse this? Was this some sick little performance they cooked up together in my sister's room? I could practically picture it, her convincing them, charming them, manipulating them, the way she always did. She'd been scheming like this her whole life, and I was the only one who never bought her act. Maybe that's why she hated me so much. So, I grabbed my jacket off the chair and said, "Guess I'll save you the trouble," and I walked out. Nobody stopped me. Nobody even flinched. My sister smirked like she'd won a prize, my mom looked back down at her tea, and my dad didn't bother lifting his eyes from the glowing screen in his hand. When the door shut behind me, I took a deep breath. And you know what? It didn't hurt. Not the way they probably wanted it to. I wasn't like my sister, desperate for approval, obsessed with being the golden child. I'd known for years that I was never their favorite. They tolerated me, sure, but love? Support? That had always been reserved for her. Still, it stung. Not because they let me go, but because of how easy it was for them. No hesitation. No, wait, let's talk about this. Just silence. That night, I crashed at my best friend's place. We opened a cheap bottle of wine and laughed about it, making jokes about how my sister probably thought she was queen of the family now. My friend shook her head and said, "Honestly, sounds like you're better off." And she was right. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just random. My sister had been planting seeds for months, whispering to my parents that I didn't belong, pointing out how I was different. It wasn't enough for her to be their favorite, she wanted me gone. 2 days later, I realized just how far she'd taken it. They were leaving for a family vacation. Suitcases lined up at the door, my sister laughing as she barked orders, playing cruise director for our parents. I stood on the stairs watching her, and she made sure I saw her every smirk, every glance. She wanted a reaction. Finally, she turned to me and said, "So, are you just going to sit here all alone? What are you even going to do without us?" I smiled, calm, unbothered, the exact look I knew would drive her insane. "Hopefully they take you to a hospital for the mentally ill on this trip," I said. "Maybe they'll even have a room for mom and dad." Her face turned beet red. Then came the screaming, the tears, the theatrics. My parents rushed to comfort her, glaring at me like I had just kicked a puppy. "You're so cruel," my mom hissed. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" I shrugged. "Because I'd rather be sane." And that was it. They left, and for the first time in years, the house was quiet. No insults. No games. No constant power plays. Just peace. I curled up on the couch with a bowl of popcorn, played my favorite shows, and for 2 whole days, I lived like the house was mine alone. Music blasting, dancing in the kitchen, cooking whatever I wanted, it was bliss. Until the calls started. The first one buzzed in at 10 a.m. I was flipping pancakes when I saw my sister's name light up my phone. I rolled my eyes and hit silence. The second call came 5 minutes later. Then another. By the time I finished eating, I had 7 missed calls. By the 8th, curiosity got the better of me. I picked up, already annoyed. "What?" I snapped. Finally, her voice came through, high-pitched, panicked. "Why didn't you answer? I've been calling for hours." "Because I don't care," I said flatly. "What do you want?" "We're in trouble," she stammered. "Define trouble." She hesitated. My sister never hesitated unless she was lying. "We, got robbed." I raised an eyebrow. "You got robbed? On your perfect little family vacation?" "Yes," she shrieked. "Some guy stole all of our money. Mom and dad are freaking out, and we're stuck here with nothing." I didn't know who else to call. I grinned. "Why not call Mike?" I asked, meaning her husband. Silence. "Oh," I said slowly, the grin spreading wider. "You didn't tell him, did you? What happened? Did the guy steal more than your money?" "Shut up," she hissed. "This isn't funny." "Oh, it's hilarious," I laughed. "Let me guess, you went somewhere you shouldn't have, and now you're too embarrassed to admit it. Am I close?" Another pause. "Then, are you going to help us or not?" I leaned against the counter, savoring the moment. On one hand, she absolutely deserved this. On the other hand, there was something incredibly satisfying about hearing her squirm. Let me think about it," I said slowly. "In the meantime, maybe ask one of those locals you like to hang around with. I'm sure they'd love to help." She started yelling, but I hung up before she could finish. For the rest of the day, my phone buzzed nonstop, calls, texts, voicemails from both her and my parents. 15 missed calls in total, messages begging for help, my mom's voice trying to guilt-trip me with, "I thought you were better than this, we're your family." Family. The word made me laugh out loud. Family? Didn't they just tell me I had no place in it? I typed one last text to my sister, "Sorry, but I'm just a roommate, remember?" And with that, I turned my phone off. 2 days after the endless barrage of calls, I woke up to a single text from my sister. It wasn't the flood of emojis or threats I'd been expecting. No, this time, it was short, cold, and to the point, "We're coming home. Thanks for nothing." I stared at it for a moment, then shrugged it off. Whatever mess they'd gotten themselves into, it wasn't my problem. I didn't know them anything, not after the way they'd treated me. When they finally returned, I heard the noise before I saw them, slamming car doors, my mom's loud voice bellowing about luggage, and my dad mumbling something under his breath. But of course, my sister had to make the grand entrance. She stormed into the house, red-faced and furious, with her husband, Mike, trailing behind, struggling to drag their suitcases through the door. Mike gave me a small nod as he passed me in the hallway, like he always did. He was one of the few people in that family I actually respected, probably because he wasn't blinded by my sister's nonsense. Maybe he even knew I was the only sane one left. Once they were all inside, my sister turned to me, her eyes seething with rage. "You're unbelievable," she spat, jabbing a finger in my direction. "We needed you, and you just ignored us." I leaned casually against the wall, crossing my arms. "I'm sorry," I said, though my voice made it crystal clear I wasn't sorry at all. I didn't know roommates were supposed to cover each other's holidays. My dad glared at me, his voice low. "This isn't a joke," he said. "We were stranded in a foreign country. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to beg for help?" "Humiliating?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You mean like being told you have no place in your own family?" Because I wouldn't know anything about that. My mother, exasperated, let out a sigh. "Why do you always have to be so difficult? We're your family, and families help each other." "Oh, now we're family?" I laughed, the irony thick in my voice. "That's funny. Last week, I was just a burden. Did you forget that?" My sister, who had been pacing the room like a caged animal, exploded. "You're such a child. Do you have any idea how much stress you've caused us? Do you even care?" I locked eyes with her, my gaze unflinching. "No, I don't. And you know why? Because you don't care about me. You never have. All you've ever done is tear me down, and now you expect me to bail you out? I'm sorry, but I'm done." For a moment, there was nothing but silence. My sister, for once, had no response. My mom, who usually had something to say in any situation, stood there, speechless. It was almost satisfying. Then Mike, who had been quietly unpacking by the door, spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "She's right." Everyone turned to stare at him. My sister's eyes widened, and her voice rose in disbelief. "What?" "I said she's right," Mike repeated, not backing down. "You treat her like garbage, and then you wonder why she won't help you. Maybe if you respected her more, she'd feel differently." The room went dead silent. My sister looked like she'd just been slapped. "I can't believe you're taking her side," she hissed. "I'm not taking sides," Mike said calmly. "I'm just saying you can't treat people like they're nothing and then expect them to come running when you're in trouble." For the first time in years, it felt like someone had finally seen me. But, of course, that moment didn't last. My dad, always the peacekeeper, quickly stepped in. "Look, we've all been through a lot this week," he said. "Let's just move on and try to put this behind us." "Sure," I said, grabbing my bag off the couch. "Let's put it behind us. In fact, let's put everything behind us." I turned to face them, my heart steady and resolute. "I'm done." "Done?" my mom asked, her frown deepening. "I'm moving out," I said, my voice unwavering. "I'm packing my things tonight. And I'm not coming back." My sister rolled her eyes, the same dismissive look she always wore. "Oh, please. You've said that before." "This time I mean it," I said, my words final. Without another glance, I headed upstairs, leaving them in stunned silence. That night, I packed my bags, called my grandmother, the only sane person in this mess, and told her everything that had happened. She wasn't surprised at all. "Come stay with me," she said. "You don't need them." And just like that, I was free. The next morning, without a word, I left the house behind. My grandmother's cottage was only an hour away, and I couldn't wait to get there. It was the kind of place where neighbors still brought over pies for no reason, and everyone knew your name. When I arrived, she greeted me with a warm hug and a plate of cookies, just like she always did. "You're better off without them," she said, patting my hand. "Stay as long as you need." I thought that was the end of it. I was free. I could finally breathe, far away from the chaos of my family. But of course, it wasn't that simple. 2 days after I moved in, I received a phone call from an unknown number. At first, I ignored it, probably just another scam. But when the same number called again, something made me answer. "Hello?" I said carefully. "Is this name?" A man's voice asked, serious, almost too official. "Yes, who's asking?" "This is Detective Ramirez with the county police," he said. "We're investigating a report involving your family." My stomach dropped. "What kind of report?" I asked, my voice unsteady. "Your sister has filed a complaint against you," he said, his tone neutral. "She claims you made threats against her safety before she went on vacation. I'd like to ask you some questions." I froze, staring at the phone. "Threats?" I laughed in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "She's lying." "I understand this may come as a surprise," he said, his voice calm. "But we have to investigate every report. Can you come to the station tomorrow morning?" I hung up before he could say anything else. My mind was racing. This was a new low, even for my sister. Filing a report against me? Was she trying to have me arrested? I told my grandmother what had happened, and she shook her head. "That girl has no shame," she muttered. "But don't worry. She doesn't have a leg to stand on." "Let's go fix this," she added, as if it were just another day in the life. The next morning, my grandmother and I drove down to the police station. My stomach was in knots, but Detective Ramirez wasn't what I'd pictured. He wasn't some grizzled, gray-haired cop out of a crime show. He was young, sharp-eyed, and had this calm kindness about him that immediately put me on edge, in a good way. He sat me down, asked me a few questions, and within minutes it was obvious my sister's story was crumbling. She said you threatened to hurt her, Ramirez explained, flipping through his notes. But when we asked for details, she couldn't give us any. Every time we pressed, her story changed. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course it did. She's lying. That's all she knows how to do. He nodded slightly, leaning back in his chair. That's what it looks like. Honestly, it feels more like a personal vendetta than anything else. We're dropping the case, but, his eyes narrowed, serious now. Be careful. People like this? They don't give up easily. You might want to keep your distance. Relief washed over me, but it was tangled with a knot of anger that wouldn't loosen. I knew my sister was manipulative, but filing a false police report? That was a new level of low, even for her. When I got back to my grandmother's house, she was waiting with an envelope in her hand. This came for you while you were gone, she said. It was from Mike, my sister's husband. My chest tightened. Confused, I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in his neat handwriting. I need to talk to you. It's important. Call me. I just stared at it, my pulse quickening. Why would Mike reach out to me, of all people? What could possibly be so urgent? Against every ounce of better judgment I had, I dialed his number. Thank God, he breathed when he picked up. I wasn't sure you'd even read the letter. What's going on, Mike? I asked, suspicion lacing my voice. It's your sister, he said, his tone tense and shaky. She's hiding something. Something big. And I don't know who else to turn to. What do you mean hiding something? I pressed. He hesitated. I don't want to say too much over the phone. Can we meet? In person? I almost hung up right then. After everything she'd done, the last thing I wanted was to get dragged back into her mess. But something in his voice, raw, desperate, made me pause. Fine, I sighed. But this better be worth it. We agreed to meet the next day at a little diner just outside of town. When I walked in, Mike was already there, hunched over a cup of coffee, looking like he hadn't slept in days. The second I slid into the booth, he leaned forward, lowering his voice to a whisper. Your sister lied, he said. His hands shook slightly against the table. About everything. I gave him a look. Tell me something I don't know. No, he said, almost pleading. I mean everything. The robbery? It wasn't random. She planned it. I froze. What? She was working with the guy who robbed us, he said quickly. She gave him the money on purpose. Called it an investment. But then I found out, she's been draining my accounts too. I think she's drowning in debt, and she's trying to cover it up. I stared at him, my mind spinning. This wasn't her usual manipulation. This was criminal. And that police report against you, he added quietly. That was her distraction. If you were in trouble, nobody would look too closely at her. I leaned back in my chair, my whole body tense. Why are you telling me this, Mike? Because I don't know what to do, he admitted. His eyes were tired, desperate. I can't trust her, and I sure as hell can't go to your parents, they'll just defend her like always. You're the only one who sees her for what she really is. For the first time in years, I felt something I didn't expect, pity. Pity for Mike, not her. He didn't deserve to be caught in her web. I'll think about it, I finally said. But if you want my help, you have to be willing to expose her. No more covering for her. He nodded quickly. I'm ready. But the way his eyes darted away told me he wasn't. The confrontation came faster than I thought. The very next morning, Mike showed up at my grandmother's doorstep unannounced. He looked pale, broken, like he hadn't closed his eyes all night. I told her I knew everything, he blurted the second I opened the door. She lost it, screamed at me, denied it, then admitted it. And now she's threatening to leave, to take everything with her. I sighed, already exhausted. And what exactly do you expect me to do about it, Mike? She's dragging your parents into this too, he said, panic creeping into his voice. She's convinced them that I'm the problem. They're on their way over right now to confront me, and I need someone to back me up. I hesitated, torn. This wasn't my problem anymore. I'd spent my entire life cleaning up after my sister's disasters. I'd finally escaped, finally breathed free air. Why should I get pulled back in? But then I thought about Mike. How decent he'd always been to me. How much she'd already taken from him. Fine, I muttered. But listen to me, Mike, this is the last time. The very last time I get involved. When we arrived at Mike's house, my parents were already there, sitting stiffly on the couch, looking like they just stepped into a foreign country. My sister, of course, was pacing the room, talking a mile a minute, her words tumbling out in a chaotic blur. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me walk in. What's she doing here? She snapped, glaring at me like I'd just wrecked her perfect little world. I invited her, Mike said firmly, his voice unwavering. She deserves to be here. My sister's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen since high school, but before she could throw another tantrum, I stepped forward. Let's skip the theatrics, I said, my voice calm but sharp. Mike knows about the robbery. He knows about the money you took. And I know about the phony police report you filed against me. The room went silent. My parents' faces drained of color, their eyes wide in shock. What is she talking about? My mom asked, looking at my sister with growing suspicion. She's lying, my sister screeched, her voice trembling. She's just trying to turn you against me. Enough, Mike snapped, his tone cutting through the air. I have proof. He pulled a stack of papers from his bag and laid them out on the coffee table, bank statements, screenshots of texts, even a copy of the police report she'd filed against me. The room fell into a thick silence as my parents began reading through the evidence. This can't be true, my dad stammered, his voice shaking as he looked up at my sister. Tell me this isn't true. My sister's facade crumbled. She burst into tears, but it wasn't the kind of crying that made you want to console her. No, it was loud, messy, and completely over the top, like she was trying to make herself the victim. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she wailed. "I was desperate." "You didn't mean to get mugged?" I shot back, crossing my arms. "You didn't mean to steal from your husband? You didn't mean to lie to the police?" "Shut up," she screamed, her face twisted in rage as she turned to face me. "This is all your fault. If you had just left like I told you to, none of this would have happened." I couldn't help but laugh, genuinely amused by the absurdity of it all. "Wow," I said, shaking my head. "You're actually blaming me for your crimes?" Classic. My father, who had been sitting there looking pale as a ghost, stood up abruptly. "We have to go," he said, grabbing my mom by the arm. "What about her?" my mom whispered, glancing over at my sister. "She's not our problem anymore," my dad replied, his voice cold, emotionless. My sister's jaw dropped. "What? You're just going to leave me? You did this to yourself," my dad said flatly, his eyes hardening. "I can't help you anymore." For the first time in my life, I watched my parents walk away from her. They didn't say another word. They just left. And my sister, well, she stood there, frozen, her face twisted in disbelief. When she finally turned to me, her face was filled with pure, seething anger. "Are you happy now?" she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "Ecstatic," I replied, grinning wide. "And just so you know, if you ever pull something like this again, I won't just walk away. I'll make sure you pay for it." She stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. Mike let out a long, relieved sigh, running a hand through his hair. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice shaky with gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "You would have figured it out," I said with a small smile. "You're stronger than you know." Over the next few weeks, everything started to fall into place. My sister moved out of Mike's house, and he filed for divorce. My parents tried to pretend like nothing had happened, like the last few weeks were just a bad dream, but I stopped talking to them. I stayed with my grandmother for a while, saving money until I could get my own place. As for my sister? Last I heard, she was couch surfing with some friends, still trying to talk her way out of the mess she'd created. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, and the constant chaos. And I knew in my heart that I'd never go back. A year later, I was sitting in my new apartment, sipping coffee and watching the sunrise when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mike. "Hey, just wanted to say thanks again for everything. I hope you're doing well." I smiled and quickly typed back, "Doing great, hope you are too." For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about what my sister or my parents were doing. I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next disaster to explode. I was finally living my life on my own terms.